Hello, everyone. I'm the Bodacious Cowboy with my co-host, Christy Knichel. Are you ready for a special edition of the Storytelling Chronicles? We are. Let's go.
Look out! Pop, it's showtime. Showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. Showed up, I'm wearing Cuban links. Designer mix. Inglewood's finest shoes. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to get the color red, the blues.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Storytelling Chronicles, empowering women into logistics. Besides me is one of the best co-hosts anybody could ever have, Christy Knichel. How are you?
Awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. We have an excellent guest today. Why don't you tell everybody about our guest?
Absolutely. We have the wonderful Abby Hamm. She is the Vice President of Highway Sales at Covenant Logistics Group. With more than 17 years of industry experience, Abby is a result-driven leader with a focus on strategy, business development, and revenue management. Abby joined Covenant in March of 2022 as a Senior Director of Sales and was promoted to the Vice President within 3 months and has become the integral in the continued success of Covenant's long-term strategy in both sales and leadership. In 2023, Abby was named a top woman in leadership, Tennessee by Women. We admire and honored as a 2024 top woman to watch by Women in Trucking Association. Abby serves as a board member for the Women in Trucking Foundation and the University of Tennessee Women in Leadership Program. She earned a degree in economics and an MBA and resides with her husband and 3 sons in Franklin, Tennessee. Let's bring her on out.
Let's do it. Hello, Abby. How are you?
Hey. Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How are y'all?
We're doing fine.
Dude,
You almost caught me dancing to the intro music a second ago. So
every time I'm back here dancing, he probably
There you
sees
go.
I think it's a good way to calm people down if there's a little bit of nerves. Just catch them dancing on camera.
Right?
Yeah, we tried. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join Christy and I. We can't wait to talk to you about your journey and how you got into Covenant Logistics. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Christy covered some of it. I have been in logistics for about 17 years. So obviously I started when I was in elementary school. So, started at a really young age. I was actually living in Savannah, Georgia. I'm from a small town in Georgia, about 45 minutes west of Savannah. So after college, I moved to Savannah and was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And there was a article in the paper or a job in the paper for an export booking and traffic representative at a local freight forwarder. And I applied through the newspaper ad and started my career in logistics on the international side in 2008 and did that for a couple years. My husband and I moved to the middle of nowhere, Ohio, because of his career in agriculture in 2010. And I came on to my first domestic transportation opportunity there through BNSF Logistics. So after that, I think I just fell in love with logistics, talked a little bit about my background being in economics. And it was kind of, I say it wasn't weird or whatever, a coincidence or I don't know, serendipitous. A week or two into what I was doing in the international freight forwarder, it just clicked. I loved logistics. So after BNSF, I went to a Canadian-based freight forwarder, and I was there for just under 9 years. And then I got heavily recruited to come to Covenant in 2022 and decided to make that change at that time. And it's been a great opportunity at Covenant and a great ride in transportation.
So question real quick. So you moved to Ohio, but you're in Tennessee now, or?
I am in Tennessee. So we actually did a tour of the Midwest. Like I said, my husband's in agriculture, and we lived in Salina, Ohio, which is
exactly where that is.
You do a tiny town in Ohio, and then we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And then we moved to Valparaiso, Indiana, and that's when I went on to FLS in Chicago. And then when we had our first son, we moved back home to Tennessee. He's from Tennessee, and we knew we needed a network of family when we had children. So we moved to Tennessee to be closer to his family. And now I've got 2 sets of grandparents in the same town. So it really worked out for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, with having 3 boys and all that, I'm sure it's helpful with their presence being there. So
absolutely. It takes a village, and that is the truth. When whoever came up with that saying, it's absolutely the truth. It takes a village.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So coming to Covenant, I'm just curious. So you came there for sales initially?
Yeah, so I was brought on as the senior director of sales for Covenant. I was managing a small business development group at the time that I came on, and then I was promoted to vice president of sales. And since that time, my role has expanded or changed a little bit, just as we've restructured sales. And currently the vice president of highway sales, which is all of our assets, and then our logistics group as well. So managing a group that sells into that business unit.
Okay, awesome. Now, in your roles, I'm sure Covenant has a lot of women there, but how is that dynamic there in the group that, like, say you work with specifically?
Yeah, so I'm actually the only woman in sales currently at Covenant. We actually have a probably, people would be surprised at a smaller sales team for the size company that Covenant is, and I'm currently the only woman in sales. It hasn't always been that way. We've had people come and go throughout my tenure here, but I'm currently the only woman. And sometimes that's just the way it is. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we're on a podcast today talking about empowering women into logistics, because even now we're still pretty underrepresented in some areas of the industry. And when people see other women like them, that look like them, sitting in seats, it makes them think, well, if she can do that, I can do that too. So that's one of the reasons I get out here and I talk about my journey, and I want people to see what's available to women in this industry, because I think it's important to continue to allow visibility into what's available to you and what we do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just got off of another podcast myself where I was being interviewed, and I talked about that specifically because I do think a lot of women, even back in the day, would tend to think like transportation or trucking, like you're driving a truck or it's a dirty kind of industry, so to speak. You're getting your hands dirty is what I mean. But at the end of the day, there's all kinds of jobs and roles for women in this industry that they probably don't even think about at all. So I agree with you. I think putting yourself out there and putting yourself out there like you have, like I have been looking at some of your content and some of the, women to watch coming up and stuff like that, being on the board of Women in Trucking. I think that's really important. So do you want to maybe go into a little bit about what your role there is and what you're doing to empower women into logistics?
Sure. So I'm on the board for the Women in Trucking Foundation. So they are 2 separate entities from Women in Trucking and the foundation. The foundation is really responsible for the scholarship program that the Women in Trucking Association supports. And it's really about empowering women into the trucking industry by giving them financial support to do things like going to trucking school or working on helping them find avenues to further their career in being a diesel mechanic or safety or leadership. I mean, it's just a wide array of things that we do to give women more opportunity. Because when I was interviewing for that board position, one of the things I said that I think women struggle with, and we talked about it just a second ago, is just lack of understanding what's available to them, and so lack of kind of education about the trucking community, and then how to gain access to those opportunities. And that's really what the foundation is all about. And I was talking to a colleague earlier today, and when you put out the promo for the podcast, you said something about C-suite influence, and I'm reading Ellen's book, by the way, for Ellen Boyd, the president, she's no longer the president of the Women in Trucking Association, but she started it. And in the first chapter, she talks about embracing how people see you. And at some point in this journey where I started putting myself out there on LinkedIn, I started embracing how other people perceived my influence, and whether that made me a little uncomfortable because I don't really know how to respond to that distinction. I started embracing it because I felt like it was important. And I just have this conviction of empowering more women, of getting our voices out there, of talking about the challenges we face that are specific to us in this industry, and as working mothers and spouses, and balancing the expectations we have at home and the expectations we have at work. And so I really started embracing that in a public forum on LinkedIn. And since that time, I've gotten the opportunity to do more. And that came with getting the board position on the Women in Trucking Foundation, getting more speaking engagements, winning some awards here and there. But again, like I said, I've just tried to embrace it as much as I can to show other women this can be you. And so I'm pulling the women behind me up, just like the shoulders that we stand on the women before us. And I think it's important that we continue to do that and show other women what's possible in trucking. Because even now, my parents are like, what do you do? You work in trucking? That's what we paid for all that education. You're going to go drive a truck? I'm like, no, even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There are so many things available to all of us in this industry. And it's amazing what we do to keep America moving.
Yeah, let me ask you this. You were talking about challenges. What, being that covenant and that sales position that you're in is all guys. What kind of challenges are you facing in that environment? I mean, are you on site or are you remote?
So I work remote most of the time. I do go into the office, and I'll say one thing about the current space that I am in. It's always been embraced. I've never felt like an outsider. I think that early on in my career, before I had accomplished some of the things that I've accomplished in my career, there were challenges that were, I think, harder to overcome. And I think some of that's the things, maybe, I don't want to say the way that women think about their roles in organizations, but at Covenant, I've been embraced, and, I've been, my accomplishments celebrated, and it's been a really, really good environment to work in. And that's one of the reasons I chose to go to Covenant. I chose an organization that really aligned with who I am as a person and the values that I have, because I felt like it was really important for this stage in my career to be able to represent a brand and an organization that aligned with who I was and what I wanted to represent in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Because not every company is doing the right thing or making people feel, welcome or a part of the team. And sometimes I feel like some of them just don't know. But I've had men call me and say, hey, I need to hire more women. Like, how do I get more women to come into this fully dominated male brokerage? And it's like, you need to hire more than one. But also, set a foundation and expectations. And I know one company in particular here will call me, actually send the women to me to have a talk with me, even just to kind of, let them know what logistics is about, and just someone to kind of look up to as they start, which I think is great, especially the men that are out there trying to figure out, how do I bring more women in to make them feel comfortable? Because some of these environments are they're different than other companies, and it can be intimidating, I think.
Absolutely.
To a lot of people.
Yeah, and to your point, how does one, being, an office predominantly all male, try to figure out how to hire a woman if they never had a woman working for them in the first place? I mean, I've never been in that position, so I'm lost there. I've had that background where I did hire women, and it was part of the corporate structure. But to your point, how would you go about that? I mean, I don't think you can answer. It's got to be a guy's answer, because if you've never worked for one, you want to enter into that field, and they never had women in there. How do you write the structure and the framework and the policies for a woman? I mean, that's tough.
It is tough. I talked to a manufacturing company that was next to me at a career fair this year. And he said one of the challenges he has with his company bringing women in is everything on the marketing and brochures is men. There's no women. Like, to your point, Abby, if she looks like me, I think I can go work there because it looks like I can be there. Right. So he was recognizing that stuff that this company's not doing. So it's also like a construction type company where there's roles for women specifically, but they're not going to maybe feel comfortable if they don't see other women potentially in other positions there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
marketing too. They have to get a whole new marketing team to do that.
Yeah.
I think what some things that I've seen companies do previously is hire somebody like you talked about, Christy, or put together a group of advisors who are women on how you would attract more women into your organization or into your industry or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I think, asking women to be peer advisors or advisors to you, if you were trying to do that, would be a good way to go about it. And, they can try to talk to you about what they see in organization that make them want to come on and work there. But you're right. If you don't have that experience, it can probably be extremely challenging.
Yeah. And I think what's helpful though, is like people like yourself too, that are out there speaking, you're doing these things. I know there's a lot of us now. I feel like that, this didn't really exist before. But I think that's very encouraging for a lot of women that are out there to see that there's all different kinds of levels and different types of jobs out there for women. And the more that we put ourselves out there too, like I said, this was not easy for me, like public speaking or any of that. Like, what do they say? Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I've been doing that for a long time, and obviously I'm more comfortable with it now, but it's still sometimes tough to get on that stage and speak in front of a lot of people, but I do it because I know it's important. People want to hear that story. They want to know that they can do what you are doing as well, to get there. And with that being said, like, along your journey, have you had any mentors along the way?
Well, I actually talked about this on a group that I spoke with not too long ago, and I actually talked about it a little bit on LinkedIn, just because I think when you speak to male peers or male people within your organization or other organizations, they always talk about how important mentorship was to their career pathing. And a lot of them have one mentor, two mentors, several mentors throughout their career that have kind of taken them under their wing and it helped them push them into the path of success. And statistically, women are far less likely to find mentorship or pursue mentorship. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One of the reasons is because a lot of times the possible mentee or mentor in the mentee are a male-female relationship, and that can be extremely challenging because of just societal norms, or women don't feel like they have the time for mentorship because they also have a family to take care of in their spare time. And a lot of times this mentor-mentee relationship is happening outside of business hours or in excess to your work. So, statistically, women have not had the same level of mentorship that men have. And I think it's so, so important. So, I have offered to mentor women if they'd like it. I've pointed them to organizations that offer mentorship, like Wilds, Women in Logistics and Delivery Services has a mentorship program. I mean, the Women in Trucking has some mentorship programs, and just trying to align resources with women who want to receive mentors. And then I think that organizations could really do a better job of trying to align mentorships within their company and finding the right mentorship programs internally too. I would say that I was probably in my, let me think, would have been, I don't know, in my probably early to mid 30s before I really had anybody take what I would call real interest in my career in sales. I'd been an extremely successful salesperson at my previous organization, but I was probably, well into my career before I had anybody really take a lot of notice and start spending time on mentoring me. And I think it changed the trajectory of my career because I'd been working really, if I'd said it myself, I've been working what I felt like was 3 times as hard as my male counterparts to get a fraction of the recognition. And when I finally had somebody who was invested in my mentorship or mentoring me in mentorship, it changed the projection of my career. So I think it's super, super important. I think more women should not only look for mentors, but also mentor other women.
Yeah, there's another challenge I was just thinking while you were talking was when you're asked to come into meetings and you're the only woman there. Now, the way society is going, it's like, well, if somebody asks you to go out to dinner, well, you better bring a female counterpart with you, and vice versa, because people are nasty out there. Let's just put it, they're nasty. They could say that you did something that you really didn't do. Now, it's so what would you say to women that there's probably a lot of women out there that think that way as well. Well, sorry, I can't go to this meeting. I'd like to bring another woman with me, or just being honest and truthful, but there are no other women that work for that company. It's just you. So how do you master that and be able to go through that when it's a part of the job?
I think it's extremely challenging, because I think if you are ambitious in your career, that there's going to be a lot of opportunities that in situations like you described, where it's just a dynamic that you may not be used to. So I think, I always talk to women, and I think younger generations are doing a very, very good job of this, of setting boundaries and stating those boundaries extremely early. So it might not be a dinner, it could be a coffee, or it might not be, it could be something that makes you feel more comfortable. But like I said, I think stating those boundaries clear and early are really the best thing that you can do. And I do think that younger women in our industry are doing a really, really good job of being vocal about their boundaries and setting those and sticking to them. But I've never had a problem with if boundaries are set, or I'm, expressed my concern about X, Y, or Z, with it not being accepted and embraced, and plans changed.
Yeah, but I would also think that those boundaries has to be set at the time of the interview.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? And using EQ, emotional intelligence, and seeing how they're responding to that question can tell you whether or not it's going to be a good place for you, good fit, or it's not going to be a good fit. But a lot of them, I would say, would fail to ask that kind of question because they want the job, and they think that that's going to be, an obstacle to work through. And they're like, no, I don't have time. I need to pay bills, blah, blah, blah. But it's so important, to your point, to get that out there in the beginning and to set those standards.
I think it's important in life and in all spaces to set that standard extremely early and be vocal about who you are, your values, your boundaries, and I don't think it ever steers you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I agree. I know I'm going to bring up Mia. She's our sponsor, Talento, but when we talked with her, she's one of those people. She's young in the industry, came in, and my concern always is these young women coming in, and do they know how to handle themselves because of the things I went through when I was younger. I didn't have anyone like guiding me or telling me. But she did talk about on our podcast a little bit about setting boundaries when something has happened that she hadn't felt comfortable with. And I think, just to your point, I think it's important that women do stand up and have that confidence that they can say that, so that they don't get taken advantage of in any setting, that they're
Absolutely.
in. Yeah. Whether it's a conference or in the company.
And absolutely. And I think, one of the keys to your success is your credibility. And I think that all of that, your boundaries and your credibility and, all that have to align for success in this industry, because it is still an industry that we're underrepresented. So you are going to be surrounded by a lot of people who don't look like you and think differently in some ways. So I think it's really, really, really important to do all those things for yourself, for your success, and your credibility for your career.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to the mentorship, I think that's so important. I mentor people, but I've also been mentored. But again, to your point, way after I would have liked to be to get there. But I do think that that's extremely important. And again, whether it's a woman or a man, I've had both and I've done both myself too. And I think it's great to be able to learn from someone else. They want your help, but then I'm learning from them too. Because a lot of the people even I talk to aren't even in my niche, but it's about some of these other things just in business in general.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, so important. So
agree.
And since I know you put a post out there too about how it's basically our duty, right, to empower these women out there. So what are some other things that you're doing out there? I know you talked about the mentorship and being on the Women Foundation for Women in Trucking. What else do you have going on?
You know, working internally with mentorship internally with colleagues that I have to, like when I see the opportunity to bring women into the right position within the organization, I'm supportive of that. You know, trying to join other organizations that support the same initiatives that I'm supporting in the Women in Trucking Foundation, and you know, just continuing to uplift other women in our industries, whether that be through LinkedIn and connecting people. You know, I'm very big on networking. I'm very big on helping other people. I love the women that I've met in this industry. I think we all uplift each other. We support each other. We're champions for each other. And, you know, just trying to do the best that I can to continue to be a voice for all of those things so that we can continue to give women the empowerment and the, you know, the options and the confidence to come into an industry that can probably seem a little bit intimidating because you think, oh, trucking, that seems very... that doesn't seem like a good place for me, but in reality, it really is. So just do my best to continue to do those things.
Yeah, which is great. I will say, like the last 2 years, I've seen a lot more women in that space trying to help other women. Where again, when I'm in my 28th year, so even 20 years ago, like it just didn't, you know, exist. So I love seeing it, and it's very important. And I think with everything you talk to us about, Jeff disappeared for a minute. Wonder what happened there, but now, I mean, with everything that you are talking about that you're involved in and what you do, and obviously you have a family, you have 3 boys. I mean, how do you find the time to be grounded or kind of just, you know, get away from all the craziness of this industry?
You know, I talk a lot sometimes when I'm talking to women about just balance. And, you know, I think a better way to probably word that is just your priorities. You know, I'm very, very vocal on my priorities. And, you know, my husband and I work together on making sure that the priorities we have as a family are honored in my career and his career, and with the busy professional lives, and then with our family. So, you know, just making sure that I continue to align my priorities, which is, you know, first and foremost, you know, my faith, my family, work, you know, kind of down that line. But in that we're putting what matters first. And then I squeeze every little bit of it out of the weekends and school when my kids are out of school, and you know, make sure that we're keeping that close, because of course those are the things that matter in life. And I always say this when I'm talking about my success: I would never be where I was at if I had not chosen to marry my husband. You know, his support and his in my career, and you know, him taking on responsibilities at home that, you know, has just been such a huge part of my success. You know, we're both working parents, and he does a lot of things that would not necessarily be considered normal gender roles when I'm unavailable. So.
Yeah, I can understand that's challenging. My husband, I asked him to be a stay-at-home dad when we had our son for the first 2 years. Now my son's 14. And about 6 years ago, I asked him, well, he went back to work. Then I asked him to be stay-at-home again because my schedule, it definitely made it easier. And I think he was fine with doing that. So he definitely does a lot of those duties, but I still do too, because I know he has his stuff going as well. And it's still not, it's not easy. I think being a man at home, not having that career. He's trying to start his career now with some stuff, but I'm trying to be now like, okay, I'll support you. And I got to kind of put myself aside to allow that to happen. So I can only imagine both working. That's especially with 3 kids. I don't know how you do that, because I know just having the one is a lot.
Well, I think a lot of communication and a lot of high fives, you know.
Yeah, I think
a lot of teamwork. We're tag teaming.
yeah, no, absolutely. So, let's see here. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you're doing. So you're leading the sales for the asset side, right?
What's the highway side? So it's our one-way solo fleet, our team asset fleet, and then our logistics side, which is the brokerage. So it's one team, and we're all selling into all three of those service offerings right now.
Okay. Now, how has that been? I know we're in a crazy, couple of years, I guess maybe 2.5 years at this point, of a market that's been challenging. Have you found it more challenging for you in that role, coming into that role, even just a couple of years ago?
I mean, I think we all left COVID with this. We didn't know what was up and we didn't know what was down. I think it's been challenging. Just, I would say everybody would say it's been challenging, but we found success where we, found where we wanted to play, and we found success there. And we'll continue to drive pivot when we need to pivot, and push into playgrounds where we want to be on, if that makes sense. And we've been successful. But just like everybody else, if you said you hadn't felt the last 2.5 years, I don't think anybody can say that. It's just been a longer trough than any of us expected. And when you're in sales, you love to win. When sellers love to win, there's no high quite like that win. And it kind of is what keeps you going from one to the next is the win. So an extended trough can be challenging, but as a leader, I try to keep the positivity in the team, and keep being a tool for them for their success, and keep leading through this with knowing that at some point it'll look a little bit different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think it is important. One of the things you just said is being positive as you go through these changes. And as a company, we've gone through a lot of changes the last few years because of our growth. And I know that's one part of a challenge, but then going through the market that we're going through and having everyone understand, like, I had to become a different leader myself this past year, which I think was a little hard, but I have some coaching that I've been getting to kind of help me get through that as the company grows. So I think, in any business, you're going to have your ups and downs and challenges. I always call this industry a roller coaster. It goes up and down, and sometimes it goes off the track, that type of thing. So always something fun to challenge you, though. I think that's what I love about it, though. It's always trying to solve a problem.
Absolutely. I think if you get bored easily and you don't like status quo and things to be the same, this is a perfect industry for you to be in, because you wake up and every day is just a little bit different.
Yes, exactly. It looks like Jeff made it back.
I have no idea what happened, guys. I'm just up in the air. It's not a surprise on my side.
It'll make it more interesting.
Hey, unbelievable.
Well, we're going to take a little break real quick and go to our sponsor real quick. I have a little blurb I'm going to read, and we'll have a little video, and then we'll be right back.
Okie dokie. Here we go.
Sounds good.
All right. Talento. We help companies grow with the right people and the right support. At Talento, we start by understanding your business goals, then guide you toward the talent and solutions that make growth possible. Whether it's strengthening your team with nearshore professionals or identifying smarter ways to scale, we offer tailored support directly or through trusted partners. Because sustainable growth takes more than hiring. It takes clarity, strategy, and the right connections.
Logistics moves fast, but is your hiring keeping up? Struggling with high turnover? Hiring taking way too long? Talent costs soaring through the roof? It's time for a smarter solution. Meet Talento, the future of logistics hiring. Nearshore talent tailored to your needs with a faster hiring time, stronger teams, and top-tier professionals from Latin America at a fraction of the cost. Skilled, reliable, and ready to make an impact. Scale smarter, hire better, and stay ahead with Talento. Ready to transform your team? Book a call with us at talento-io.com to learn about our faster, smarter, and limitless solutions today.
And we're back.
Awesome. So one of the things I was curious about with all this tech talk about AI, how do you feel about that? And are you guys, I'm sure, looking at that? Or
I mean, I think everybody in our industry has to embrace that there's some use for AI. And look, I can't believe I figured out how to get on this podcast. That's how much tech I'm good at. So I am not an expert on this, but I do obviously think that, as with any technological advances, there's a place for it. But I am very adamant that logistics is a people industry. We are reliant on drivers, professional drivers who are people. Professional drivers like to talk to people. I like to talk to people. Customers like to talk to people. So I think there's some automation and other things that everyone should embrace, because, less touches is better, sure. But I'm not the technology expert by any means. Like I said, I'm surprised I could figure out how to get on here. But I will continue to say I feel like we're a people industry, and it's not going away. A lot of people are saying, well, all the jobs are going to be, I'm not saying this is specific to logistics, but all jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And I said, well, not in trucking, because we love people.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a need for it in some areas for efficiencies, but I don't think you can ever eliminate the human, especially in what we do, because too many problems happen.
Agree. I mean, who are you going to blame when something happens? I mean, I don't know. So I like to have conversations and see people and meet in person. I think there's a lot of value in all those things.
Oh,
No, I agree.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. With AI, I mean, I'm all for tech. I've been in it for a long time, and I've seen the evolution of it. But until it gets a heart, a soul, and has empathy, no. I mean, it's a human to human. It's reading them. It's talking to them. It's understanding them. AI and machine learning. It's all gecko, garbage in and garbage out. That's what it is. You don't have that human touch, and everybody needs that human touch in this industry. They definitely do.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like years from now, maybe 5 years, 10 years. But the interesting thing is, a lot of people I talk to, when they ask you about what you do, and you're like, oh, you move freight to the stores, but I think they probably just think, oh, it's just truck, right? You see a truck on the road, it just picks up and delivers. It's like, no, there's like a million things that go wrong.
There's a million things that have to go right, and there's a million things that could go wrong. So it has to have some level of oversight, I feel like, by humans. It just has to.
Right. Exactly. So one of the things you said earlier is you work a lot from home. Is that something that has been put in place from COVID, or just curious? Because we have some flexibility here too. And since I'm a mom and I'm the CEO here, I try to be flexible as I can, obviously, not just with the women, but the men too. So just curious if that's something that the company supports.
Yeah, so I actually am based outside of Nashville. So I'm not at corporate headquarters, which is in Chattanooga. And Chattanooga does still embrace remote work and some flexibility. I am full-time. I go into the office some, but I think it's super important for working parents to have that flexibility, for specifically working moms who also take on a lot of responsibilities. Traditionally, we take on a lot of responsibilities at home, and when kids are sick, or doctor's appointments, or all these things that are just a part of life for parenting. So I am very fortunate to be able to work from home, but I do think that, remote work and flexibility is something that all employees value now. And I think younger generations have proven that that's even more true. And they'll continue to, I think, get behind that. That's one of the things that they really, really value in a workplace. So I think it's important to think about that when you're thinking about attracting talent, whether that be working mothers, which is a great talent pool, and also, younger generations that are coming into the industry.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. I will say we went back to we're work from home 1 day a week here. But there's some situations, obviously they're different. Some people that are fully remote, and sometimes that can be a challenge with the other people that want to do more from home, depending on the role. So we've had some of that come up in the past year. So trying to navigate through that, and have a lot of young staff too. So with the pregnancies, even though like we're not big enough to be the FMLA, but we have, programs in place to help the mothers and the fathers get that flexibility here as well, which I think is important. But it's interesting to hear different stories from the different companies, how it was like, say, maybe during COVID, and how it's changed or evolved over the last couple of years.
Well, I think, just in general, you see it not just logistics specific, but just across all avenues that return to office is taking kind of a front row to seat right now, that a lot of people are calling people back into the office. I mean, luckily, when you're in sales, you're out in the field a lot anyway. You're out seeing customers. It's not necessarily a traditional in-office role. So I think sales is a great place for people to work if they don't want to be in office all the time. But again, one day a week allows the flexibility for the things that we just talked about, and some can help you get some other responsibilities that you may need to wrap up in a day. So, I mean, I think that's a great option for people to still have that one day a week. And I understand that it can present challenges when it's not the same for everybody, and that's difficult and it's hard to navigate. But, as a leader, you're just trying to do what's best for everybody, and you can't make everybody happy. So.
The funny thing is, when we were smaller, I felt like there was a time where I could, and now that's not the case. So I would say that pulls on my heartstrings a little bit, but you have, like you said, I just have to embrace it. It is what it is, and, move forward with it. So another question I had for you is, what do you think has been the most significant barrier maybe in your career?
I think I talked about it a little bit earlier. I think just even on the commercial side right now, and I have no statistics to support this, so this is just my personal opinion because I am out there and networking with other women and networking with people in the industry. Like even on the commercial side, you probably see maybe even less women than you see in other parts of the organization. So I think, being blonde and, just fighting for my credibility, that I really knew what I was talking about, that I was good at my job, that I think those are some of the struggles that I had to overcome. And then once I did, my success has been embraced. But, I think women put a lot of pressure on themselves to work harder, work longer hours, do all these things to show their value because they feel like they have to. But I think it goes back to some of what I talked about earlier is, your credibility is your key to success. So I think just staying true to who you are and what you are capable of, and really working on your craft and your knowledge and, what you stand for, you can overcome anything that you feel like is a challenge for you.
Yeah. And talking about that, like, how did you get the confidence to eventually feel that you were worthy or you deserve to be in that situation?
Well, I think I just had enough success in sales, so in my individual contribution role, that I felt like, well, now people had to listen to me because the proof is on the scoreboard. And that, I think that's one of the really good things about sales is the scoreboard doesn't lie. And the numbers don't lie. And, at some point the scoreboard was very much in my favor. And so then it's like, well, wait a minute. So she does know what she's doing. She does know what she's talking about. She can do this. And I think, I was really lucky to be in a part of logistics that the numbers helped that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, another thing I was curious about is your leadership style. Since you have all men, so how is your leadership style?
I mean, I don't think my leadership style would be any different than it would be if I had more women on the team right now. I mean, I am definitely, I don't want to say, well, I don't know if you know who Amy Barnes is. She's got a consultant firm that she was in the industry on the shipper side for a while. And, she has this platform which is called Heart-Based Leadership. And I do feel like I am definitely a heart-based leader. I lead for the people. And I think that comes out, one of the people that which is, when you're talking about women in the industry now that you look up to, or you want to emulate. Like Shelley Simpson is such a great example of somebody who leads with people first. And I've always tried to approach my leadership style with being a leader for the people and putting them first. And I think that resonates with my team. And, my job is really to support them, to remove obstacles that are preventing their success, and being an advocate for their skill set and pushing them forward. And I just really, really try to keep them on the forefront of the decisions I make. Again, you can't always keep everybody happy, but you do your best to lead. I do my best to lead with putting them first. And I think that it's been embraced and people really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that. That's how I lead. It was a lot different than my dad, which was like, yeah, I'm not going to lead like that. Not that I made me who I am today. I talk about that all the time, but now I do think that's important, that you can lead that way and that people know that you care, that you're
sure.
So let me ask you this, right? Do you think that men hold back since you're their boss of telling you what's really actually going on? Like maybe because they haven't worked with women before, right? So it's just like, well, how am I going to deal with Amy? I've got some stuff. I'm not really sure if she's going to agree with that or understand what's going on. Have you had that feeling? I know it's a tough question because anybody from Covenant that's listening to this is so, yeah.
I actually don't think so. I think that there is always that little bit of when you come into a new organization, you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit. And I think I did that when I came into Covenant. I proved myself with a couple things and they're like, okay, I get it. I see why she's in the position that she's in. And that garners a level of respect. And, once you've had that respect and then like I said, you really show them that you're focused on them, their careers, their growth, their success. I think the barriers are down. Of course, that I'm speaking from my experience. So every one of them may tell you that they've been guarded the entire time that they worked for me. But I don't think that's the case by any means.
No, that's good. So how do you think that other women can support other women in other organizations?
One of the things that I think about with women in our industry is how do we come together more? So if you look at, there's a lot of, I don't know how I want to say this exactly, but there's a lot of women who are individually or not necessarily individually, but have organizations that support women in logistics. There's the Women in Trucking Association, which was the first, and now we have Women in Logistics and Leadership. I saw that one pop up the other day, or Women in Supply Chain, there's all these different organizations. And I think we're all fighting for the same outcome and we're all want the same thing. But I think I've told some of the people, the leaders in some of those organizations, how do we come together because we're stronger together? So maybe we're not pulling, we're all pulling from the same pot. How do we all pour into the same pot, if that makes sense? I think that that's really important for a step forward. Like how do we all work together, bring different groups together and work together more? And we'll see what happens.
No, I agree. I think it's really important, because again, there's been some customers of mine where it was a male and they're legit asking, where can I send my women to meet other women and learn? And so I think it's great that there's all these options out there now to be a part of where they didn't exist before.
Sure. And I'll be at the Women in Trucking Association conference in November. And that's so much fun. It's so great to see all those women come together, a pool of women drivers and just women from all walks of logistics there that represent every position. And it's just such a fun time. And to your point, encouraging women within your organization to get involved, giving them the financial means to get involved, because it's expensive to join associations. It's expensive to go to conferences. It's expensive to do all those things. And you have to help support those things financially so women can do it, because for women to be able to do that on their own or back that financially themselves is just probably not something that they can do in the current economy. So I think, giving women the opportunity to attend events and then financially backing those events is really, really important.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I also think that men should also go to those events as well, because they'll learn a heck of a lot of stuff,
Sure.
especially the ones that never worked with women. I strongly suggest that you should go there and listen, to the speakers, and because they talk about this kind of stuff, I'm sure, and the obstacles and the barriers they have to crush. And it's a very important thing that I strongly suggest. Guys out there, if you're listening to this, go to these events.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think allies and men are just as important as, strength in women.
Yeah, I agree. You need to have, and that's why Jeff actually started this podcast in the first place, because he wants to get it out there too, that men have to be a part of this.
Absolutely.
Women up and supporting them. And it's extremely, I think, important that they be a part of it. And I will say, I see a lot more men in the room now too, like Women in Logistics Lunch at TIA, or, the Broker Carrier Summit. There's a lot of women there too, but men there supporting and coming into those rooms, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, giving women opportunities to speak, like you guys have given me today for the podcast, but getting them on panels, like having representation in all these different areas is so important. And a lot of times, men are making those decisions, or, they're asked to do something. But if you can suggest a woman for that speaking engagement, or for that panel, or for an award or whatever it may be, that's not specific to women, that's, industry wide, like all those things matter in being an ally and being an advocate for women in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So, coming to the end of our podcast, one of the last things we like to ask is for you to give some advice out there to someone either in logistics trying to work their way up or coming into logistics. What would you tell them?
I think if I'm talking just specific to women, I think I talked about it a little bit, like, I saw, and I'll try to read it because I thought it was a super good quote. So let me find it really quick. But I took a picture of it, and it said, "You can't rise while staying loyal to spaces that keep you small. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make." And I just think, for women specifically coming into any industry, coming into a job, be in rooms that are speaking your name into opportunities when you're not in the room. And if you don't feel supported at the organization that you're at, it might not be the right organization for you. And if you don't feel like you're getting the support you need, be vocal about that. Ask for the support, because you don't get what you don't ask for a lot of times. And I think, being an advocate for yourself really, really matters. And I think that's true for anybody, any young person joining an industry or going into their career. Be clear on who you are and what you stand for. Ask for support if you need support. And then, if the room that you're in doesn't give you opportunities to flourish, then find another room.
That's great advice, for sure.
Really good advice.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting conversation with you. I loved the conversation, a lot of great stuff. And where can people find you, find Covenant?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Abby Hamm. I'm on there, and then I'm easily you can easily find me at Covenant too. Abby Hamm at covenantlogistics.com is my email. I'll put it out there if somebody wants to connect, whether that be for networking, mentorship, questions about the industry, questions about being a woman in the industry, advice. I'm happy to connect. You can send me a DM on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email. Like I said, I've tried to be as authentic as I can in how I represent myself on LinkedIn. And I want to, make it clear that I'm not just saying I want to help. If you need the help and you are looking for guidance or mentorship or want to talk to somebody, I'm happy to pick up the phone. I had somebody the other day, I sent a message on LinkedIn, and she sent me a message right back and said, "Here's my cell phone number, call me." And I want to be that type of person for other people too. So, come find me. I'm happy to help.
Love it. We need a lot more of you in the industry for sure. And I know there's a lot out there, so we just got to keep building.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abby, for taking the time out of your day to join Christy and myself. I thought we had a very good conversation, even though I went dormant for a couple of minutes. I came back, and that's not a surprise. But no, I appreciate you and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you both for having me.
Yep. So thanks everybody for joining Christy and I on the Storytelling Chronicles, Empowering Women into Logistics. We'll be back in the next couple of weeks for our last show. We'll talk about that. But until that time, enjoy your day and the rest of your week. Take care now.